The observation deck of the Galactic Council ship hummed with the usual frequency of concern. That was the thing about Council vessels, they always hummed at exactly 273.4 Hz when something had gone terribly, catastrophically wrong. Commander Vreltok of the Zenthari Empire pressed 3 of his 4 ocular sensors against the viewing port, watching the small blue planet rotate below with the kind of fascination one might reserve for a particularly venomous insect. Beautiful, certainly. Deadly, absolutely. So that's Earth, muttered Lieutenant Cora beside him, her translator chip rendering her clicking mandibles into something approximating disgust. Doesn't look like much, does it? Vreltok's throat sac inflated slightly, a gesture his species used when suppressing the urge to laugh, cry, or file an immediate resignation. Appearances, Lieutenant, are how the humans have survived this long. They look soft. Weak. Harmless. Are they not? Tell that to the Korthax Armada. Cora's antennae drooped. Everyone had heard about the Korthax Armada. Or rather, everyone had heard about what used to be the Korthax Armada before they made first contact with humanity. 12,000 warships, gone. Not destroyed in some epic battle of fire and fury, mind you. No, the humans had simply, as they put it, introduced them to capitalism. Last anyone checked, the Korthax were now operating a very successful chain of all-you-can-eat buffet restaurants across 3 sectors. The shame had been immeasurable. Commander, called out Specialist Tivan from the sensor array, his blue skin flickering with anxiety patterns. The human delegation shuttle is approaching. Docking in 7 minutes. 7 minutes. Vreltok had exactly 7 minutes to prepare his crew for what was about to walk through that airlock. 7 minutes to somehow explain the inexplicable, prepare for the unpredictable, and brace for the absolutely, undeniably insane. Listen up, all personnel, he announced, his voice carrying across the deck with the authority of someone who had seen 3 tours of duty and 1 mandatory sensitivity training seminar. The humans are arriving. Standard protocols apply. Do not make direct eye contact for extended periods. Do not accept any beverages they offer. And for the love of the great nebula, do not, under any circumstances, assume you understand what they're thinking. Sir. Cora looked confused, which on a Zenthari involved all 4 eyes rotating independently. They're just another species. We've dealt with 742 member races. What makes humans so different? Vreltok turned to face his crew, and in that moment, he looked every one of his 170 years. Because, Lieutenant, humans smile. The deck fell silent except for that ever-present hum. Sir, respectfully, lots of species bare their teeth, offered Tivan. Not like them, Vreltok said quietly. Humans smile when they're happy. They smile when they're angry. They smile when they're about to do something incredibly stupid or incredibly brilliant, and here's the problem, you can't tell which until it's already happened. They smile at weddings and funerals. They smile when they're lying and when they're telling the truth. They smiled at us when we thought we were conquering their planet, right before they hacked our fleet's navigation systems and sent us crashing into their ocean, where apparently, they keep creatures they call sharks for fun. For fun. That does seem excessive, Cora admitted. The dolphins were worse, Vreltok added, a haunted look crossing his features. Never trust a human pet that intelligent. Or that smug. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thunk that reverberated through the hull. Vreltok straightened his ceremonial sash, which bore exactly 17 medals, 3 commendations, and 1 small coffee stain he'd never been able to remove from a previous human encounter. The stain had been there for 5 years. He'd tried everything. The humans had suggested club soda and white vinegar. It hadn't worked. He suspected they'd been messing with him, but he could never prove it. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. 3 humans stepped through. The first was tall, wearing what appeared to be an expensive suit that had been tailored perfectly to hide exactly how dangerous he was. His hair was graying at the temples in that way humans seemed to think conveyed wisdom. He carried a briefcase, which Vreltalk knew from briefings could contain anything from diplomatic documents to sandwiches. With humans, you never knew. His name tag read, Ambassador Marcus Webb. The second human was shorter, broader, with dark skin and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She wore a military uniform festooned with insignia Vreltalk didn't recognize but deeply suspected he should fear. Her name tag read, General Keisha Okonkwo. The third human was the one that made Vreltalk's primary heart skip a beat. She was young, maybe 30 in human years, with red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and glasses that perched on her nose like two tiny weapons of academic destruction. She wore a rumpled shirt with what appeared to be a cartoon cat making a scientific notation joke. She carried a tablet computer and had the look of someone who had stayed up for 48 hours straight fueled entirely by spite and caffeine. Her name tag read, Dr. Riley Foster, Xenolinguistics and Applied Chaos Theory. Applied Chaos Theory. Of course. Of course the humans had weaponized mathematics. Commander Vreltalk, Ambassador Webb said warmly, extending his hand in that peculiar human greeting that involved gripping appendages and shaking them. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. Vreltalk grasped the hand carefully, always aware that despite their soft appearance, humans had a grip strength that could crush Zenthari fingerbones like breadsticks. Ambassador. Welcome aboard the Celestial Harmony. And then Webb smiled. It was a pleasant smile. Friendly. Open. The kind of smile that said, I'm here to help. Which meant absolutely nothing because humans smiled exactly the same way when they were actually planning to help as they did when they were planning to sell you a timeshare on a hostile moon colony. This is General Okonkwo, head of Earth's defense integration, Webb continued, gesturing to the military officer. Okonkwo nodded once, sharp and efficient. No smile. Somehow that was more terrifying. And this is Dr. Foster, our specialist in cross-species communication. Dr. Foster looked up from her tablet, blinked twice as if surprised to find herself on a spaceship, and then smiled. But it was wrong. It wasn't wrong in the normal human way where you couldn't tell if they were being sincere or sarcastic or plotting something involving rubber chickens and quantum mechanics. No, this smile was wrong because it appeared at exactly the wrong moment. They'd just been introduced. Standard protocol suggested a formal acknowledgement, perhaps a slight upward curve of the lips, maybe a nod. Instead, Dr. Foster's smile was broad, genuine, and absolutely delighted, as if she'd just been told she'd won the lottery, found her lost cat, and discovered the unified field theory all at once. Oh wow, she said, her voice carrying that particular enthusiasm humans got when they were about to make everyone else's life complicated. You're Zenthari. Oh, this is perfect. I've been studying your linguistic patterns for 6 months and I have so many questions. Your throat sac harmonics suggest a tonal language structure, but the standard translations always flatten it to binary meaning sets, which seems inefficient. Do you actually experience frustration with the translator limitations, or have you adapted your communication style to compensate? Also, your ship's hum is at 273.4 Hz, which in human terms is approximately a C#, but I'm betting that's not arbitrary. Does it correspond to some kind of Zenthari emotional resonance frequency? She said all of this without breathing. Without pausing. Without breaking that absolutely unhinged smile. Vreltalk's threat assessment systems, honed over decades of military service, began screaming at him in 6 different languages. Dr. Foster, Ambassador Webb said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder, perhaps we should let Commander Vreltalk respond. Oh, right, sorry, Foster said, still smiling, adjusting her glasses. I get excited. It's a thing. My colleagues say I should warn people before I infodump, but where's the fun in that? Where's the fun? She'd smiled while discussing linguistic analysis as if it were a contact sport. The translator works adequately, Vreltalk managed, his voice perhaps slightly higher than intended. Shall we proceed to the conference chamber? Lead the way, Commander, Webb said smoothly, and there was that smile again, pleasant and meaningless and possibly concealing the heat death of several star systems. As they walked through the corridors of the celestial harmony, Vreltalk became increasingly aware of the human delegation's behavior. Ambassador Webb maintained perfect diplomatic posture, commenting appropriately on the ship's architecture, asking polite questions about Zenthari culture. General Okonkwo said nothing, but her eyes tracked every junction, every doorway, every potential tactical position with the precision of someone conducting a military assessment while appearing to simply walk down a hallway. And Dr. Foster wouldn't stop smiling. Not in a creepy way, precisely. But in that uniquely human way where her face seemed to be permanently set to, delighted by existence itself. She smiled at the wall panels. She smiled at the gravity generators. She smiled at a passing maintenance drone with such genuine warmth that the drone actually paused in confusion before continuing its rounds. Dr. Foster, Vreltalk found himself saying, against every instinct that told him not to engage. Are you quite well? She looked up from her tablet, where she'd been taking notes while walking without looking, another impossible human ability. Oh, I'm great. This is the best day ever. I'm on an actual Galactic Council ship talking to actual aliens. Do you know how long I've been waiting for this? Since I was 6 and saw my first star chart. 24 years, Commander. 24 years of studying, theorizing, and arguing with peer reviewers who said I was wasting my time because humanity would never make contact. She smiled wider. I'm really enjoying proving them wrong. There it was. The smile wasn't random. It wasn't uncontrolled. It was victory. It was vindication. It was the smile of someone who had bet everything on an impossible outcome and won. Which meant she was exactly the kind of human who would do it again. They reached the conference chamber, a circular room designed to make all species feel equally uncomfortable through aggressive neutrality. The table was round, the chairs were adjustable, and the lighting was the kind of forgettable beige that suggested committee design by consensus. Everyone took their seats. Ambassador Webb folded his hands on the table. General Okonkwo leaned back slightly, still watching everything. Dr. Foster immediately started typing on her tablet, her fingers moving faster than should be physically possible. So, Webb began, his tone diplomatic and measured, let's discuss Earth's application for Council membership. Vreltalk activated the holographic display, bringing up Earth's file. It was impressive and terrifying in equal measure. Technological development, extreme. Cultural complexity, hazardous. Tendency toward creative problem-solving, potentially apocalyptic. Your species has met most of the standard requirements, Vreltalk said carefully. Faster-than-light capability, check. Unified planetary government, check. Peaceful resolution of internal conflicts, mostly check. Mostly. General Okonkwo's first word was a challenge wrapped in curiosity. You still have professional wrestling, Vreltalk said flatly. The Council isn't entirely certain whether that qualifies as peaceful entertainment or ritualized combat. It's fake, Foster interjected, still typing. I mean, it's real, but fake. The outcomes are predetermined, but the athletic performance is genuine. It's performance art meets sports entertainment meets collective storytelling. Also, it's awesome. She looked up, smiling. That smile. The issue, Vreltalk continued, trying to maintain control of the conversation, is not your qualifications. It's your predictability. Or lack thereof. Ah, Webb said, nodding slowly. You're worried about what we'll do once we're members. Terrified, Vreltalk corrected. The word is terrified, Ambassador. In the 6 months since initial contact, humanity has introduced 4 new technologies to the galactic market, started 3 interspecies cultural exchange programs, accidentally created a new art movement when one of your musicians collaborated with a Threxian sound sculptor, and somehow convinced the notoriously isolationist Plenther collective to open trade negotiations by sending them cat videos. The Plenther really liked the cat videos, Foster said, still smiling. Turns out they're also ambush predators, so they found the hunting behavior relatable. Who knew? That's exactly the problem. Vreltalk's voice rose despite himself. Who knew? Nobody knew. Nobody could have predicted that. That's what humans do. You solve problems in ways that shouldn't work, but do. You make connections that seem random, but aren't. You smile when you should be serious and get serious at the strangest possible moments, and nobody can ever tell what you're actually thinking. The room fell silent. Dr. Foster stopped typing. She looked directly at Vreltalk, her expression shifting from perpetual delight to something more focused, more intense. The smile remained, but now it carried weight. "Commander," she said softly, "you're absolutely right." And somehow, that was the most threatening thing anyone had said all day. The silence in the conference chamber stretched like taffy, sticky and uncomfortable. Vreltalk's secondary heart kicked into overdrive, which his species did when faced with either extreme physical exertion or the realization that they'd made a terrible mistake. This was definitely the latter. Dr. Foster leaned forward, her elbows on the table, chin resting on her interlaced fingers. The smile remained, but her eyes held something different now. Intelligence. Sharp, focused, and entirely too knowing. "You want predictability," she said, "not a question. The Council has existed for, what, 12,000 years. 12,000 years of established protocols, careful expansion, measured responses. Everything documented, categorized, filed in triplicate. And then we show up. Humanity," General Okonkwo added, speaking for only the second time, her voice carrying the weight of strategic consideration, "is not interested in being predictable." Ambassador Webb sighed, but he was smiling too. That diplomatic smile that could mean anything. "What my colleagues are trying to say, Commander, is that we understand your concerns. We do. But you're approaching this from the wrong angle." Vreltalk felt all four of his eyes narrow, which was his species' equivalent of crossing arms defensively. "Please, enlighten me, Ambassador. Tell me the right angle from which to view a species that once sent a car into space just to see if they could." "That was a good day," Foster interjected cheerfully. "Also, there was a mannequin in a spacesuit. And David Bowie playing on the radio. You had to be there." "That is precisely my point." Vreltalk's throat sac inflated to maximum capacity, turning slightly purple. "Your species does things because you can, not because you should. You lack the fundamental caution that has kept the Council stable for millennia." "Stable," Webb repeated, his tone thoughtful. He pulled out a small device from his briefcase, activated it, and a holographic display materialized above the table. "May I present some data we've compiled?" The hologram showed the Galactic Council's expansion history. Neat, orderly, color-coded by century. It looked like someone had planned it with a ruler and an abundance of patience. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Webb continued. "Very organized. Very safe. And in 12,000 years, you've expanded to control approximately 8% of this galaxy." 8%, Commander. In 12,000 years. Lieutenant Cora shifted uncomfortably beside Vreltalk. "We prioritize sustainable growth over aggressive expansion. It's the responsible approach." "Oh, absolutely," Foster said, nodding enthusiastically. "Super responsible. Also super slow. Do you know what humans did in our first 100 years of industrial revolution? We went from horse-drawn carriages to landing on our moon. We split the atom. We invented jazz music, antibiotics, and the internet. We nearly destroyed ourselves 14 times by my count, possibly more depending on how you classify certain incidents in the 1980s. That is not the endorsement you think it is, Doctor, Vreltalk muttered. Isn't it though? General Okonkwo leaned forward now, her presence suddenly dominating the room despite her smaller stature compared to the Zenthari. You've been stable, yes. Safe, certainly. But you've also been stagnant. When was the last major breakthrough in council science? The last cultural revolution? The last time anyone tried something genuinely new? Vreltok opened his mouth, then closed it. Then opened it again. We had a significant advancement in waste reclamation technology 400 years ago. 400 years, Webb let that hang in the air. Commander, with respect, we're not trying to insult the Council's achievements. We're trying to explain why Earth's membership isn't a threat. It's an opportunity. An opportunity for what, exactly? Vreltok demanded. Unpredictable chaos. Random innovation. More cat videos disrupting diplomatic relations. Yes, all three humans said simultaneously. Then they smiled. Those smiles. Those absolutely maddening, impossible to read smiles. Foster pulled up something on her tablet and projected it into the shared space. It showed a graph, multiple colored lines tracking different trajectories. This is a predictive model I built. Blue line represents Council expansion continuing current trends. Red line represents Council expansion with Earth as a member, calculated using human behavioral patterns and historical innovation rates. The red line shot upward at a 60-degree angle. That's absurd, Vreltok said flatly. No species can maintain that growth rate. You're right, Foster agreed, still smiling. One species can't. But 863 species working together, with humans acting as catalysts? That's different. See, here's what you're missing about humanity, Commander. We don't just innovate for ourselves. We innovate for fun. We innovate because someone said we couldn't. We innovate because it's Tuesday and we're bored. Last month, General Okonkwo said, pulling up her own data, 3 human engineers collaborated with a Drouthian metallurgist. You know what they invented? A new hull plating that's 40% stronger than current standards and costs 60% less to produce. Not because anyone asked them to. Because they met at a bar, started talking shop, and decided to see what would happen. The Drouthians, Vreltok said slowly, are known for being extremely conservative in their research methodology. We're known, Webb corrected gently. They've since opened 7 new research partnerships with various human institutions. Apparently, working with us is, and I quote, refreshingly unhinged. Specialist Tivan, who had been silent throughout, spoke up from his position at the sensor station. Commander, permission to speak freely? Granted. I've been monitoring Earth's communications networks as part of standard observation protocol. In the last month alone, I've observed 17 new art forms, 32 scientific breakthroughs, and one particularly enthusiastic dance craze that has somehow spread to 3 neighboring star systems. The humans didn't weaponize it. They just shared it. People wanted it. People wanted to dance like humans. Vreltok's voice cracked slightly. The hip motion thing, yes sir, Tivan said, his skin flickering with what might have been embarrassment. It's very popular. Vreltok's world was crumbling. 12,000 years of council stability, threatened not by weapons or warfare but by dance moves and collaborative metallurgy. Dr. Foster was watching him carefully now, her head tilted slightly. Commander, can I tell you something? A secret about humanity that might help? Please, Vreltok said wearily. At this point, I need all the help I can get. We smile when we're scared, Foster said softly. Not always, but often. We smile to make ourselves braver. We smile because if we didn't, we'd fall apart. When humanity first detected your ships entering our solar system, do you know what the response was? Vreltok shook his head. Panic, obviously. Government scrambling, military mobilizations, the whole thing. But you know what went viral on our internet? Memes. Jokes. People making up ridiculous scenarios about alien contact. They smiled, Commander. They laughed. Because that's how humans deal with the terrifying unknown. We turn it into something we can face. I smiled earlier, Foster continued, not because I'm unaware of how serious this meeting is. I smiled because I'm absolutely terrified that you'll reject our application and I'll never get to study Zenthari linguistics in person. I smiled because if I didn't, I might cry, and crying during first contact diplomatic negotiations seemed unprofessional. The revelation hit Vreltok like a meteor strike. All this time, he'd been interpreting human smiles as threats, as manipulation, as incomprehensible alien behavior. But they were simply expressing vulnerability in the only way they knew how. So when you smiled during the Korthax incident, he asked quietly. Ambassador Webb's expression became more serious. We were absolutely terrified, Commander. The Korthax showed up with 12,000 warships demanding our immediate surrender. We had maybe 70 ships capable of orbital defense. We were outmatched, outgunned, and completely unprepared. So yes, we smiled. And while we smiled, our best minds worked around the clock to find a solution that didn't involve mutual annihilation. The buffet restaurants, Vreltok said. The buffet restaurants, Webb confirmed. Turns out the Korthax had never encountered the concept of unlimited food for a fixed price. Their entire culture was based on resource scarcity and military hierarchy. We introduced them to supply chain logistics and customer service models. They found it revolutionary. Their military commander is now CEO of what I understand is a very successful franchise operation. They're happy, General Okonkwo added. Happier than they were conquering planets. Last report said they're expanding into catering services. Vreltok looked around the conference chamber at his crew. Lieutenant Kora's antennae were quivering with what he recognized as suppressed amusement. Specialist Tivan was pulling up more data on human cultural exports, his expression fascinated rather than horrified. Even his own threat assessment systems had quieted, no longer screaming warnings but instead humming with something that might have been curiosity. You're telling me, Vreltok said slowly, that Earth's entire diplomatic strategy is controlled chaos held together by smiling? Controlled is generous, Foster said, grinning wider. We prefer directed chaos. It's like surfing a wave. You can't control the ocean, but you can ride it somewhere interesting. And you want to bring this approach to the Galactic Council. We want to share it, Webb corrected. Commander, we're not asking permission to change everything overnight. We're asking for the chance to participate. To contribute. To maybe, occasionally, suggest that there might be a better way to do something that hasn't been reconsidered in 4,000 years. Like waste reclamation? Vreltok asked dryly. Like everything, General Okonkwo said firmly. Your military strategy, your scientific methodology, your cultural exchange programs. All of it could benefit from a human perspective. Will we make mistakes? Absolutely. Will some of our ideas be terrible? Without question. But some of them will work, and those ones will change everything. Vreltok stood, pacing the length of the conference table. His species did their best thinking while moving, something about the rhythm helping to organize thoughts. The humans watched him, and he noticed that Foster had stopped smiling. She looked nervous now, genuinely nervous, fingers drumming against her tablet in an irregular pattern. The humming of the ship had shifted. 287 Hz now. The frequency his species associated with important decisions. Let me understand completely, Vreltok said, stopping to face the human delegation. You want council membership. In exchange, you offer unpredictable innovation, strategic chaos, and the occasional viral dance craze. And friendship, Foster added quickly. Don't forget friendship. Humans are really good at that. We make friends with everything. We domesticated wolves. We're trying to befriend octopi even though they can't even leave the water. We sent messages into space hoping to make friends with someone, anyone, and you showed up. Do you know how excited humanity is about that? We're not alone, Commander. We have neighbors. That's amazing. Something in Vreltok's chest, maybe his primary heart or possibly just his sense of duty, shifted. He'd been so focused on the threat assessment, the potential chaos, the breach of protocol, that he'd missed something fundamental. Humans weren't dangerous because they were aggressive or hostile. They were dangerous because they were enthusiastic. They approached the universe with the kind of unbridled curiosity that the Council had systematically trained out of its population over 12 millennia of careful, controlled expansion. They smiled because they were happy to be here. Ambassador Webb, Vreltalk said formally, returning to his seat. I'm going to recommend Earth's membership to the Council with full endorsement. The three humans exchanged glances. Foster's smile returned, but softer now, genuine relief rather than defensive enthusiasm. However, Vreltalk continued, holding up one hand, I'm also going to recommend a dedicated liaison program. Council species working directly with human counterparts, not to control you, but to learn from you. And possibly to occasionally say no when your ideas become too ridiculous. Like the time someone suggested we build a space elevator out of spider silk. Foster asked. Did that work? We're still testing it, but early results are promising. Of course they were. Then we have an agreement. Webb extended his hand again, and this time Vreltalk grasped it firmly, no longer worried about hidden meanings or ulterior motives. One more thing, Vreltalk said, his throat sac quivering in what humans would recognize as a smile, though they couldn't possibly know that. About the ship's humming frequency. You were right, Dr. Foster. It does correspond to emotional resonance. 273.4 Hz indicates concern. Right now, we're at 287. What does that mean? Foster asked, leaning forward excitedly. Anticipation, Vreltalk said. It means the ship knows something interesting is about to happen. General Okonkwo actually smiled for the first time, a brief upturn of her lips that somehow seemed more dangerous than all of Foster's enthusiasm combined. Commander, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. That's a quote from an old Earth movie, Webb explained. I know, Vreltalk said quietly. I've been studying human culture for 6 months. Preparing for this meeting. And? Foster couldn't contain herself any longer. What do you think? About us? About our movies and music and art and weird cultural quirks. Vreltalk considered his answer carefully. The truth was, human culture was messy, chaotic, frequently contradictory, and utterly fascinating. They created beauty and horror with equal passion. They laughed at tragedy and cried at joy. They were simultaneously the most frustrating and most interesting species he'd encountered in 170 years of life. I think, he said finally, that the next 1,000 years of Council history are going to be significantly more interesting than the last 12,000. Is that good or bad? Lieutenant Cora asked. Yes, Vreltalk said, and found himself making a sound that approximated human laughter. Dr. Foster pulled out her tablet again, fingers flying across the screen. Oh, I'm documenting this. First recorded instance of human-induced Zenthary humor response. This is going in my dissertation. Do you mind if I ask you some follow-up questions about the physiological mechanism of your laughter? Is it purely respiratory, or does the throat sac inflation play a role in acoustic modulation? And there it was again. That smile. That absolutely unhinged, delighted, terrifying smile of someone who had found a new puzzle to solve. Ambassador Webb stood, the meeting clearly concluded. Thank you, Commander. For giving us a chance. I promise we'll try not to accidentally revolutionize more than 3 or 4 major council systems in our first year. Try for 2, Vreltalk countered. And run them by me first. Deal. They shook hands again, and Vreltalk escorted the human delegation back to their shuttle. As they walked through the corridors, crew members stopped to stare at the humans with mixtures of curiosity and concern. Foster waved at everyone enthusiastically, still asking questions about ship design and cultural practices and whether Zenthary had any foods that humans could safely consume. At the airlock, General Okonkwo paused. Commander, one last thing. When you file your report to the Council, tell them humanity comes with a warning label. Which is: contents under pressure. Open with caution. Results may vary. Do not expose to open flame or bureaucratic obstacles. Vreltalk's throat sac quivered again. I'll include that in the formal documentation. The humans boarded their shuttle, and Vreltalk watched through the viewport as it detached and began its return flight to Earth. The blue planet hung in space below, spinning peacefully, giving no indication of the absolute chaos its inhabitants were about to unleash on an unprepared galaxy. Lieutenant Cora joined him at the viewport. "Sir, do you think we made the right decision?" "Absolutely not," Vreltalk said cheerfully. "But it was the only decision that made sense. The universe doesn't stay static, Lieutenant. It evolves. And evolution requires mutation, variation, change. Humanity is the change the Council needs, even if we don't realize it yet. They're still terrifying." "Completely," Vreltalk agreed. "But now they're terrifying on our side." The observation deck's hum shifted again. 300 Hz exactly. The frequency of hope. Far below, on Earth, news of the Council's preliminary approval spread across networks at light speed. Celebrations erupted in major cities. People gathered in streets, looking up at the stars with wonder and excitement. Someone started playing music, and within hours, a new dance craze was born, one that would indeed spread to 3-star systems by next Tuesday. And across the planet, 7 billion humans smiled. Not because they were happy, though they were. Not because they were relieved, though they definitely felt that too. They smiled because the universe had just gotten bigger, and possibilities had expanded beyond measure, and somewhere out there among the stars were friends they hadn't met yet, puzzles they hadn't solved, and adventures they hadn't imagined. They smiled because that's what humans did when faced with the beautiful, terrifying, wonderful unknown. They smiled, and the galaxy noticed. And somewhere in Council archives, a new notation appeared in Earth's file, added by Commander Vreltalk himself in careful, considered script. Warning: humanity smiles when it should not. This is not a defect. This is their greatest strength. Proceed with cautious optimism and unlimited coffee supplies. The file was marked, approved, with reservations and hope. And the celestial harmony hummed its agreement at exactly 300 Hz, the sound of a galaxy about to change forever.